Tonight, we take a very special look at the classical musical, The Sound of Music. Then, we'll continue our Star Trek Deep Space Nine discussion with Q-Less and Dax. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. And welcome back to The Writer Brothers for another fun Tuesday night discussion of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But of course, we do have a very special discussion regarding the sound of music. Tonight, I am only joined for now by Corione, and I will later, of course, be joined, John will try to show up in the chat if and when he can. But for now, kind of got caught up in a situation where his living situation pretty much in a matter of 48 hours shifted on him. So he's got other things he's got to take care of. Arende, good evening to you as well. Welcome back. Good to see you here. Orion, how are you feeling about tonight's show?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm just hoping our good buddy Pollozapatos, enjoys the extra dimensional closet I set him and his family up in. And, hopefully they're okay in there for a little while, right?
So
it is bigger on the inside, so...
Yeah, how come you gave him the TARDIS and my only offer was a trash can?
The dumpster is good for keeping people on the moon for 5,000 years. And you did want to go to the moon.
Yeah, so Rogue Council's leaking. Yeah, so... It is a very special occasion for Pollozapatos and myself. Yesterday was actually our mother's birthday. She would have been 56. And to honor that, we decided to use our show to take the time to revisit a classic which we hated as children. And that, of course, was The Sound of Music. And I decided to watch it. And I gotta say... not the movie that I remember. I mean, I remember the parts and I remember the movie progression, but looking into it now, being a writer myself, it is so much different. Rende writes in, it's good for Fires 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But yeah, so Sound of Music. Now this also holds a little bit of a special place in my heart. My family is all from Austria. And my family was actually, their house is My ancestral home is actually down the street from the Von Trapp family residence. There's a cool little plaque on the building now and everything.
Wow.
So
that is quite that's small world indeed. And looks like from Facebook, Matt Moser writes in, "Hey brother, hey Matt, good to see you. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you watching tonight. Yeah, really grateful for everybody who's shown up." Arende, he's responding to dumpsters. Arende writes in, he says, "Dumpsters are, I mean, it's hard to understand when the punchline is so long after you read the comment." That's yes, and I do try to keep up with everything, and hopefully the delay doesn't get too much. And then Glinda writes in, "Hello, fellow humans." If you insist, Glinda. Just kidding. Glad to have you
I'm nearly human, so I guess that counts.
I'm fine. And it does look like Corione has followed us on Twitch. All right, thank you, Corione. So
I mean, really, that's the only follow you ever really needed on Twitch.
Right? Yeah. No. Exactly. All right. So, The Sound of Music. If you have not seen this film yet, well, then we'll try to summarize it, and hopefully the spoilers won't be enough for you, because really, this movie's just something fantastic to see. And everybody at least once in their life should give this movie a try, because I remember it being one of those cheesy, feel-good, romantic comedies, and Glinda has doubts about her origins as well. Yeah, I mean, we all have those existential crises every now and then. For me, it's every day. No, I'm just kidding. Sound of Music is an interesting film. It came out in 1965, and it takes place in pre-Nazi Austria, like literally pre-Nazi Austria, like it's right on the doorstep. And there's several ways you could look at this film. One, you could look at it as though you have, wow, I'm blanking on the lead singer's name all of a sudden. The main character.
Commander Von Trapp?
He's not the main character. I mean, he's a main character, but no, Julie Andrews' character.
Oh, Julie Andrews' character.
Yeah.
Okay.
Julie Andrews, who's a woman who usurps the authority of the man in his household. I'm only sharing that thought because I've heard it unironically shared to me before. But what's interesting, though, is it's a good thought to have to start with, because it sets because in the same sense that she's, kind of usurping his fascistic authority, he himself is already resisting an impending fascistic authority. And so in the course of her, exposing the kids to making their own songs, he then, of course, comes around to realizing maybe he was a little harsh in the process, and suddenly goes, oh, I'm imposing this authority on my children, and I'm not connecting them with them like a dad, which is understandable. He's been a dad in grieving for about 7 years now. And, we hit 10 views. Obligatory like, subscribe, and share, please. And so now he's having to deal with, he's realizing, and he's finally connecting with his kids, and everything's great until the new authority moves in, and they now have to give up everything they own and run away, or embrace the new authority and serve in it, which thankfully for our one of our heroes was not an option. Captain Von Trapp was not going to have any of that, and unfortunately, some of his cohorts and some of his fellow countrymen, if you could call them that, were embracing their Third Reich overlords. And this, of course, became a point of conflict when he tried to sneak the family out in the middle of the night and was caught. He did not see that coming.
Oh.
Anyway. No, this film, when I watched it as a kid, not having learned anything about World War II and the Holocaust, it really does give you new perspective, especially years on, because I had not seen this. I can't remember when I had seen this movie, and it's been a long time. Cozy Koala writes in, this was my first time watching The Sound of Music with Petey, and Glinda says, this was one of my little sister's all-time favorite movies. Well, awesome. I'm glad you guys have that to share in and enjoy, and like I said, we're doing this as a special tribute to Maya and Pollozapatos' mother as a way to honor her memory the day after her birthday, but, do our show on Tuesday, so it is what it is. So, Corione, I think I've rambled on enough. What are your thoughts? What did you think, having seen this recently? When was the last time you watched it, actually?
So I watched it specifically for the show, but on average, when I normally watch it, is, believe it or not, every Christmas. If it isn't on, it gets streamed in my house Christmas Day when we're not doing much else. And to me, it's always been this story that the reason why I love the story is not just because, it's a great little romance. It's, got a lot of it's got a lot of very adorable characters, and Maria is a textbook example of like a, quality heroine done right. But I think to me also the big part of it is, it really shows how fractured the world was at that time, where some neighbors would be going along just to get to survive. Others were trying to get out of the way of this before it became too much, and others went full on embrace it so that they'd be in a better, because I guess they figured it was better to be at the devil's side than than in his wake. And I'm not a fan of that philosophy, obviously, but I do understand why somebody would choose that if, you're in the situation they're in.
Yeah. I certainly have a certain level of empathy for being in those tough situations where, it's a tough situation all around. And it sucks even more when your government fails to represent you properly and decides to sign an armistice with an enemy that you already know is not something that you want to be in bed with or involved with, let alone commanding ships for. And
yeah,
so,
I mean, a lot of people forget that the first country that these guys invaded was Germany, and the second one was Austria. They think that it was just one big conglomeration and they all decided to be evil at the same time. It didn't go down like that.
Yes, we all get along because we're evil.
Nobody, Cobra Commander didn't suddenly spring up and start an army, right?
Yeah, good riddance.
Oh, thank you. It was one of those weird situations where a demagogue got into power and he was able to convince others that he should be in power, even though everyone sane kind of went, this isn't a good plan.
And then the brown shirts came and beat you up for saying that out loud.
Exactly. So you either were quiet and obedient, or, you got whacked. Yeah. I mean, for my family, I know.
Else today.
Yeah, right. For my family,
kind of
I can relate I can relate a little bit of a story. You have to understand first that my family had a long and very proud military tradition where they were always serving under the Austro-Hungarian Imperial Army. And we had now hit a new time of change. And my family was basically told in no uncertain terms that, well, you're either going to, sign up and be part of this, or you're imprisoned or shot. Your call, right? So they were on the Russian front. My grandfather was actually part of the tank division that got all the way to the point where they could see the women in Moscow bringing in their laundry. That's how close they came to actually invading Moscow. Before they got turned back. And after the war, my grandfather, a 250-pound big, bear of a guy, came out of the Russian POW camp 87 pounds.
Wow.
And was promptly told by the church who had come in that he owed back tithes from the war. So if he didn't pay up, he was, he was going to be going to jail yet again, and there was no way he could survive that. So that's why I wound up in Canada, actually. So kind of an interesting kind of family story that, I look at the Von Trapps as what could have been almost for my family, right? Those kind of large families at that time were very, very common in Austria.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Go for it.
We do have So Glenda first writes in, Germany was in rough shape after the end of World War I. A lot of Europe was in dire financial straits. People were hungry. And yes, I do want to get to that in a second. Mahalo, Oregon says, wow, I believe in response to the story you just shared, which, by the way, thank you. That just learned of that today. But hey, you know what? That's what I love about doing this show with you, is that we learn stuff while we do it instead of like trying to cram each other's lives in on the off.
Oh yeah, and I mean the cool stuff too was at the end of it when he found out what had actually been happening in the regime, because I mean you got to remember at that time there were only, the paper was your only news source, and the paper was controlled by these terrible people, so they weren't reporting these things. When he found out what was going on, he was appalled by it, obviously. And I mean, when I got a chance to actually talk to him about it, he had freely admitted he never had actually, this is a family, you got to remember, that lives up in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. They never actually met a Jewish person, but he kind of figured they were probably like everybody else, just trying to get by. And having to deal with that, it struck him pretty hard, and he made an effort to try to get to know Jewish people in Canada to try to figure out, what the logic of all this was, because he didn't see it, and I feel like that's a good thing that he tried to sort out all of that.
Sorry, another fan mail Crispin Hill writes in, hello nephew, first time listener, much love from the Oregon coast. Much love to you and Alicia as well, Crispin. Thank you guys for tuning in. It means a lot that you guys are here tonight. And yes, that just sounded like a soundbite, but no, I really...
No, but seriously, welcome. We're glad to have you, and family is always welcome.
Yeah, I mean, Glenda, there is that factor. Like, I think a lot of it too was Germany was not treated fairly after the First World War. I mean, I remember learning about the Treaty of Versailles in 8th grade history class, and I'm like, and you're surprised that I guess we should be careful not to trick the censors too hard. You're surprised that the the swastika folk rose to power? I mean, I'm not saying that that's okay. However, we can look at symptoms and cause and effect here. I mean, that treaty was basically Germany's going to be the world's slave for 100,000 years.
Yeah. It was never going to fly.
And then this correct, charismatic character with who's the other
with the backing of a lot of powerful people
all the time. Charlie Chapman, with the Charlie Chapman styled mustache comes in and starts talking about, hey, I'm gonna fix everything. Yes, he had the backing. I believe that the oligarch actually I'm at the point where there's never really been a dictatorship. It's usually the council who's behind the scenes and they push their front man up forward. But that's
kind of like what the Rogue Council does with various American politicians. Oops.
Yeah, no, I really think that the Mandarin in Iron Man 3 is a good reference to understand kind of what Hitler character was like. Now, whether or not he was that good or bad, it doesn't make a difference. Bad stuff happened, and it happened under his watch. His watch, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's there's a lot that went into it. However, there were people that did do the right thing and stand up and stick to their values, and sadly, some of them gave their lives for what they thought was right. And in the end, we can see that, well, when history promises, when someone comes in making promises of grandeur, you definitely want to be careful about how much power you give them, if any at all. That's why I like the rule of law and the republic so much. It really shouldn't matter who wins when you vote, because it should only matter every couple of years, and we should all be able to go on about our lives like everything's great, because that's really, beyond that, do we need anything else?
Well, I mean, one of the coolest things about the American system is the way you guys have set up your checks and balances in such a way that, like,
they were good for a while.
I'm just saying, unless something really crazy happens, they tend to move slow on issues they can afford to move slow on. And in a lot of ways, that's a good thing, because it gives them time to think about what the problem's going to be and how to resolve it.
Yeah, and it gives we the people more time to discuss issue. Well, what we're supposed to do is discuss issues and have proper, more informed consent. So,
exactly.
But anyway, this is about The Sound of Music, which is about a bunch of rebels resisting a interesting. Yes, the libertarian patriot that Julie Andrews plays, who comes in and liberates the kids from her dad, and then liberates the dad from himself.
Don't forget good Christian woman too.
That's what I like about this film, is the fact that she was a part of a nunnery, I think more has to do with the setting in the area, because I think really anyone of any faith can relate to this story and this situation and can see their own ideals and values represented. And that's what I really liked, is that this is what the nunnery is supposed to function like. They don't force the issue. You go to them, which I guess you would kind of understand that from what we've discussed, and you decide to participate, and you decide to do it because that's what you want, or that's what you feel you're called to. And that's, Maria, she felt like she was called to do this, but really it was just a part of a stepping stone to get her to where she was supposed to be. And I freaking love, that song, How Do You Solve a Problem Like Maria? I love how they have that. I'd never noticed until this watch through that it actually reprises during the wedding. And it was like, how do you solve a problem like Maria? Oh, of course, marry her off to a military captain. Duh. I also really liked that. I love that song, Climb Every Mountain. That one did resonate with me as a kid. But oh my gosh, that line that Reverend Mother says when she says, you have to live out the life that you're born to. I was just like, if there was a time I needed to hear that, it was now. And that's just it. It's such a wholesome
It's
movie.
a timeless movie.
Orville Nation writes in, hey guys, hey PJ, welcome.
Hey.
And Cozy Koala writes in, I feel like she may have been an orphan, and that's why she had an attachment to the nunnery.
Yeah, if I recall, that's correct.
Yeah.
But you know what? I always kind of look at it as, part of her fate was joining the nunnery so that she could find out how she could best actually serve. And it wasn't in the nunnery, it was where she belonged, where she needed to be with that family. And ultimately, that's a wonderful thing, right? How awesome is it that somebody is open enough to be able to be exploring their faith and realize, wait a minute, I would be much better as a stepmom to these kids. That's where I need to be the most help and where I'm going to be fulfilled. So that's what I'm going to do. And everyone not only agreed and helped her, but, went out of their way to remind her how important that is. That, once you found your path, don't walk away from it, embrace it, love it.
Well, and that's something that anyone who's in any kind of position of spiritual leadership can learn and take away from that movie is the way that Reverend Mother, she doesn't try to keep, you've got to stay on the straight and narrow and honor your vows. No, she knows that Maria doesn't belong there full time. She knows that's not her destiny. And instead of, we need more nuns, to clean up on Thursdays. No, this is where you belong. And Maria wanted, she knew that, but she was in conflict with what she thought she wanted and what she knew she wanted. And that's when the spiritual advisor comes in and says, it's not that simple. I know we make it look simple, but it's not. And you are chosen for something else. You are clearly going to be happier married and being a mom than you are going to be a nun. And yes, there's so much good stuff that comes out of this movie.
Oh yeah.
The breakup between Captain Von Trapp and the Baroness. That's how adults break up. Okay, that's not something that's in the movies. That's when you're having a hard time. That's the way that you want to part on, is good terms.
And I mean, I still think honestly that the two of them really did still like each other even after the breakup. They just, he was head over heels in love with Maria, and he realized that, and he ended it at the right time to try to make sure nobody's feelings got hurt, and did it honestly. This is, guys, for any young men and young ladies out there, this is how you handle a relationship. If it has to end, try to end it in such a way that you do the least amount of harm to everybody, and you're honest with everybody about your feelings. I know it sounds corny coming from an old guy like me, but it really matters. It really, really matters.
All right, got some fan mail to catch up on real quick. Matt Moser says, I'll subscribe if you sing Climb Every Mountain. We'll see. We might save that for the very end.
I would love to. Unfortunately, YouTube gets very persnickety about what we are allowed to sing on air. There might be a copyright issue there, so we should probably avoid that. Not because we're terrible singers, but because we don't want the channel taken down midstream for a copyright violation.
And let's be honest too, we don't have CC Karaoke here to lead us properly to
this is true as well.
Right. So also to catch up, Orville Nation writes in, I thought you guys were talking about T and Telly when I first got here. Well, I mean, there's certain qualities and characteristics that both Marias share there.
I mean, look, the what to do about a problem like Maria from Maria and T and Telly is like and subscribe her channel, because she's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. Too bad Pollozapatos isn't here to put links in the chat, and I don't feel like doing it. So I'll see. But anyway, I do want to point out, I do want to say, on the note, I can actually give a real-life example, well, yeah, as real-life as I could have seen it, from a friend of mine who goes by the name of David Thibodeau, which, if that name sounds familiar, that's because he happens to be a Branch Davidian survivor from the Waco massacre. He actually recently broke up with his longtime girlfriend of about 3 to 4 years, and they're both friends still on Facebook. They had nothing except nice things to say about each other, and they did it like adults. And so I would like to, whether or not he sees this or not, I just want to say, David, that was inspirational, even as a happily married man, to see setting an example in society. That is exactly the way to go about it, because there's nothing to be gained hurting the other person in the end. And I'm even going to take a step further and say, guys, gals, even if the other person does something so horrible, you're not going to gain anything by doing something horrible back. People aren't going to see, oh, well, you were clearly wronged, and so of course you should be a piece of shit in return. They're not going to see that. You're going to see two pieces of shit arguing over who's shittier. And that's the way people see it. And,
yeah. Like,
Matt Moser has actually decided to subscribe anyways.
Awesome.
Climb every mountain. Subscribe to the Ryder Brothers. Share our stream everywhere. That's what you're getting. A crap parody version I just threw together in my head.
Fair enough.
You know what? You might as well. If it's going to subscribe, you might as well make it.
That's it. And Matt, welcome to the channel. We appreciate having you here.
Yeah. Actually, you want to talk about fun, so Matt and I we think we're related. We met in Coast Guard A school. He was going to be an information system technician. I was doing operations specialist, and we started talking. And we're talking to. It turns out he was actually related to the Duke of York at one point. We actually calculated it out. We are actually technically cousins, 19 times removed, but close.
Very
enough.
nice. Very nice.
Right? Who cares? Who's counting? Well, I guess I was, but yeah.
Doesn't that make you like Alabama brothers or something?
No. We're like this in our family tree. You're thinking like this.
Okay. My apologies.
It's all fine. It's all in the. Let's not go there. So, No. More like the hills. Anyway.
Yep.
I'm not doing that again.
Well, thank you.
The Sound of Music.
We all appreciate that.
The Sound of Music really is a brilliant movie, and yes, it's timeless because it still has lots of good values, and it's not one of those dumb feel-good romantic comedies. It really does. You really feel the emotion from Christopher Plummer's acting, as well as Julie Andrews. Like. They make you feel what those characters are supposed to be feeling, just in some of the facial expressions and the mannerisms. It's really a special movie in so many ways. And, I mean, it's hard for me to believe that that's the same guy who would later go on to play General Chang in Star Trek VI. I mean, I still, like, I couldn't even see it watching this movie. I'm just like, that's him. And I could hear it a couple of times, but then the rest of the time, I'm like, that's not the same guy.
Like you half want him to quote Shakespeare while trying to kill Kirk, right? Like,
or telling the Nazis to piss off. Like,
right?
That's exactly yeah. And it's
like
ironic. It's ironic that in Star Trek VI, there's even a reference to that.
Right.
Oh man.
I mean, look. One of the scenes that I really, really like is when Maria first realizes that she's falling in love with the captain, and you can see her face go flush.
I'm sorry, I've got to stop real quick. Delinda added a comment. I didn't catch it in time. I'm going to do this one last time for everybody. Delinda's chat. You'll see it you'll hear it when you see it.
Okay.
Climb every mountain. Watch every stream from the Ryder Brothers. I saw it. I'm like, that's it.
approve.
I'm gonna sing it because she's right. It's right. And then real quick to catch up, Cozy Koala says, I teared up a bit, honestly. Yes, me too. I don't know what spot you're talking about, but I agree. And Orville Nation says, great actor.
Yeah, fantastic actor. Julie Andrews was also fantastic. My favorite scene, absolutely. My favorite scene with her in the movie is when she dances with the captain at the party. And, this is not an easy thing to pull off. But her face actually does go flushed. Yeah. And the subtext of her dancing with him and then realizing, oh, damn, I'm falling in love with him. And then not knowing what to do with that because she's been raised in a convent. Or she's been around the convent for so long, she doesn't actually know what to do with these feelings. And the only thing she can think to do is run away. There's some fantastic subtext there. And it could have been, if any other actress had tried to pull it off, I don't think they would have done as good a job as all of that emotion playing out on Julie Andrews' face in rapid succession like it was. That's a fantastic thing. It's super hard to pull off, especially where you're managing to make your face flush and then not flush right away. That's hard. And very impressive that she was able to do it.
Yep. Cozy Koala writes, in the movie in general had me tearing up. Well, yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of beautiful singing. And Orville Nation says she just turned 87 this week, referring to Julie Andrews. Congratulations, ma'am. That's, fantastic. And Matt writes in, she almost didn't get the role. Oh, interesting. A little bit of trivia I wasn't familiar with, Matt. If you're able to explain in 200 characters, or if you want to go ahead and explain it in the chat, we'll definitely share that piece of information more if you want. You don't have to. Oh, and Matt also subscribed on the YouTube, or did he just subscribe on YouTube? I thought it was Twitch.
Well, I saw it on Twitch, but
subscribe. You're here. That's all I care about. There's so much that you just don't understand as a kid because your mom's making you watch this sometimes as punishment, other times because she just feels like it and decides, it's punishment. No, it's, you're a kid. You don't want to sit for 3 hours unless, there's like lightsabers involved. And even then you don't want to sit for 3 hours because 30 minutes through the movie, you want to start going on a Jedi crusade through the theater and fighting everybody else who has lightsabers. Yes, I'm referring to when Star Wars was fun. But anyway, no, this is absolutely a timeless movie and everyone should watch it at least once in their life. And I'm really glad that Seth MacFarlane actually put it in the Orville and really worked it into the show in such a masterful gag. But it's good that that shows do that because then some people see that and they go, oh, what's that? And then they look it up and they find the song on YouTube and then maybe they find the movie. And then so that's a really cool way that's when I have a lot of respect for certain showrunners is when they help preserve past culture by actually integrating the media into their own stories. And obviously for us that's easy because we just talk about it. But it's awesome when you see just how much of an impact this movie has had on pop culture throughout the years. It's not something to be taken lightly. But I only learned this many years after my mother passed away. To me, this film was just the bane of my existence for a long time. Except when I think the last time I do remember watching it all the way through, I did start to have a bit more of an appreciation for it. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the things that in my house, it's kind of got a special place. To give you guys a little bit of background, because it's important to understand why this movie is a big deal around here. While, both my wife and I are Wiccan now, my family is from Austria. My wife's family is all Jewish. And our daughter is just getting to the age where we're going to have to start talking about some of this and explaining where great-grandparents of hers were during World War II. And that's going to be an interesting and difficult decision and how we tackle it. But movies like this give us a window, give us an opening to explain that not everyone in those times were good or bad. Some people were just trying to live and trying to survive. And that's why this movie in my family is going to be super important down the road. The music is beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely timeless. Those songs can be played for forever. Edelweiss is an absolute favorite in my home. It's absolutely beautiful. I wish I could sing like Christopher Plummer does in the movie.
I would just be happy if I looked like him.
Well, I mean, under the beard, probably you do, right?
No, there's a baby under here.
Well, I'm going to assume that if we were to get you out of Mountain Man mode, that there'd be like a Christopher Plummer under there.
You over-flatter me a little bit. I mean, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. All right, yeah. Matt writes in...
Just like I'm going to let you assume that underneath the beard here, there's an Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I already knew
it's
that.
Not really.
Clearly.
But,
the resemblance is uncanny.
Exactly.
Matt writes in, Walt Disney himself, I should say, actually intervened to get her the role. Nobody thought she was going to be good at it, the musical, until she showed them clips of Mary Poppins. Oh, was she in Mary Poppins? I know that.
Yes.
Oh, wait, she was Mary?
She is Mary Poppins in the...
So I've got another classic I need to catch up on. I could have sworn that was somebody else, but maybe in the reality I woke up in.
I believe the exact word should be supercalifragia. Just watch the movie.
Well, I only recently watched Predator for the first time, so it should come as no surprise that I've got half of the cult movies I'm supposed to have watched by now, and the other half I don't have, so... But, yeah, that's what happens.
That's what happens to all of us, right? There's some that I've completely missed, too, along the way, that I'm going to have to catch up on eventually, right? But I get this kind of, like, weird mode where, like, I know I should probably catch up on this movie, but because I didn't see it in the time I was to see it, I don't know if I really want to now. Like, the legend is not going to live up to what people are hyping it up as.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that, what's his name from Guardians? Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure he's actually Mary Poppins, according to Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, yeah. Oh man, no, I do love this movie. I do think it's great. A lot of the actors involved have moved on to wonderful things in their career going forward from there.
Yeah, so it's amazing what a difference a hat can do to a person, because I barely see it now, but wow. Learn something new every day, thankfully. No, thank you, Matt. Yeah, no, we definitely all have gaffes, and honestly, Orville Nation, that's why we do this show, is to try and bring content to people that yes, we like to share and discuss, and people who what am I saying? Like to share and discuss in pop culture that we enjoyed, to share with others that you may or may not have seen. So this show is also not just supposed to be, what's current and what we like. It's also supposed to be, hey, if you haven't seen this, here's why you should. And then Matt writes in, don't let Parker fool you guys. He looks stunning under the beard. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, like I said, we figured
that out. I
look
more stunning now with this beautiful hair.
Well, you see, the trick is that in order to... See, he's so gorgeous a human being that's all you'd focus on, and you wouldn't listen to him. So he had to grow the beard as like a defensive measure to make sure that all of us would pay attention to what he's saying, as opposed to just like worshiping him for his stunning good looks. He did us all a favor, really.
Sure. Yeah, good human being and me in the same sentence. That's a good joke. I love it.
Yeah, well, I try.
Yeah. There's just I could go on about this movie, and so I'm going to. It really, it's almost like those 3 hours go by fast until, thankfully intermission hits and you get a chance to pee. Which honestly, I think needs to come back for 3-hour films. I think there's some wisdom in having a quick, 10, 15-minute break, even if you're streaming at home. I mean, nowadays with a pause button, how many people have actually sat down and watched Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, extended 4-hour cut all the way through? Yeah, That's what I thought.
Without break? Yeah, no.
It's not. That's a fun. That the DVDs are also nice because they actually give you an intermission because it's like, all right, it's time to go from this movie to the bathroom. Then you go to the next disc, and then you continue. And oh man, I missed DVDs.
You know, I keep a huge physical media library in my house specifically because I don't necessarily trust the streamers not to edit things after the fact.
We've already seen that.
Right. So, I mean, literally what I have is shelves that go up of DVDs and then shelves across the top of my DVD racks further up. It's like one of the Shinto arches going through my house everywhere. You wind up with DVDs instead, so...
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I definitely need to get a physical copy of this, because the only ones that I had access to as a kid were these things called VHS, which, you know, I know that's ancient technology now, but I definitely want to make sure this needs to be in my vault. My vault currently consists of a plastic tub of all the movies that I could lug with me going to different stations throughout the Coast Guard. You know, when you're on a ship, you can only bring so many movies with you. Matt writes in, have you guys reviewed the 10 Commandments yet? No. But that, you've seen that one, right? With Charlton Heston?
I absolutely have seen that movie. You know, his, let my people go is fantastic, right?
You know, yeah, and you know what? I think that's something we could probably easily plan for a Passover special.
It would be interesting. I mean, you know, definitely a Messianic Christian and a witch reviewing the 10 Commandments sounds like it would be one of those special videos that we're gonna have to
that
do.
almost sounds like a review we got to do on the Rogue Council, to be honest.
Right? Like,
so as it turns out, Moses was an alien. Well, depending on how you want to look at it. No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I'm sure we could have a whole lot of fun with that.
Oh yeah,
especially if we're like, now you see here that, you know, there's a simple way to actually part that sea. You just have to do the following.
See, he had a stick, okay?
Yeah,
so
that's all you really need anyway, right?
Yeah. No, but good suggestion, Matt. I think that's probably what we will do. I mean, because, you know, as a Messianic Christian myself, would I encourage people to watch The Passion of the Christ? I think that's really for Christians who are deep into the lore by then, and I think that's really a film that you just kind of need to decide. However, The 10 Commandments would be an excellent movie to review, not just for its, you know, its significance of the time period and for the reference of the holiday, but also, again, another great piece of cinema artwork that absolutely would be fine. We might even just have to do a whole show or, a special.
Yeah, I mean, like, sitting down and, you know, not being as much part of the demographic that would be seeing this movie as more of a sacred. I think it'd be very interesting for us to pull the story apart a little bit and go, you know, like, this is the messages we think are super important in this movie. Because I think you and I can both agree there are definitely some very important messages here and some very important philosophy and you know, critical components there that we could definitely explore and I think would be a lot of fun too.
Yeah, and I am also looking forward to, even this month, some of the stuff that you may be sharing throughout the rest of the month when we also go through some of our favorite October themes.
Yes.
Yeah, but more on that later. In the meantime, it looks like, according to Orville Nation, so it looks like Elon is buying Twitter after all.
Yes.
Cool. Actually,
Listen,
that is cool, because then we can finally have adult conversations again.
You know, look, I looked. Okay, so my personal opinion on this, I want to make it clear, not necessarily the Writer Brothers' opinion.
Personal
right?
opinion alert. Personal opinion alert.
Look, everything Elon has done in his entire career up until this point has always been about getting to Mars. Okay, SpaceX, Boring Company, even PayPal, technically, when you really think about it, is all about what you would actually need on Mars for currency, so you weren't dealing with stuff.
I'll see your Red Sea and raise you a red planet.
Yeah, there you go. But the Twitter doesn't make a lot of sense to his master plan, so it almost feels like he had to do it because if he didn't do it, it would be too hard to deal with the divisiveness that Twitter tends to produce. So here's what I would say. I think it would be great if Elon found a way to, instead of it being used as a tool to divide us, it become a tool to share our opinions in a respectful manner and bring us together, which I think we need now more than ever before.
Yeah, and that's our motto here at the Writer Brothers. We are on, and it is an overly ambiguous, and you know, I'm sure some people think I'm full of myself for saying this, but we really do mean to restore respect into discourse, and that was part of the reason that I was so cautiously optimistic at the time to start the show with Corione, because, I mean, look, guys, you have well, my beliefs are my own, I'll be honest. I don't really conform to a specific religion, but you have a Christian and a witch on the same stream talking about the sound of music.
Right. I mean, you can't get more cool than that. Yeah.
And I mean, we're not bothered or offended by each other's different things and stuff. Sometimes I do cringe internally, but I also realize, well, I'm kind of cringing because of programming. I'm not really, do I really care what Corione does with his life? I mean, I hope he stays alive, but...
Yeah, and I mean, same deal, right? I mean, like, to me, look, it's not, you know, I completely respect Petey. His beliefs are not mine, but he's 100% free to have them, and I'd fight to the death to make sure he can continue to have them.
Thank you.
Because we learn best from many different voices coming together and sharing their individual truths and learning from those truths and taking back what we can from them. Yep. And if, you know, if anything, hopefully this shows that you can have divergent opinions on things, and we definitely do, but we respect each other enough to allow those differences and say, you know what, at the end of the day, you know, we still respect the hell out of each other, and you know, we enjoy each other's company, if only because it makes us think about what we believe more and become even more, you know, it gives us new perspectives on what we believe in a wonderful way. So I thank you for that, sir.
Iron sharpening iron, and yeah, and you know, I've said it before on other streams, and I'll say it, you know, with everybody here. You know, I was inspired by your openness with your own faith, even though you have to be considerably more secretive than I think anyone should have to be.
Fair.
It's helped me to return back to me, because I realized, you know what, I don't own the problems of Christianity as a whole. I don't own the sins of the past. I own my sin. I don't own Corione's sin. I don't own Matt's. Arende writes in, oh my god, respecting other people's ideas even if you dislike them? What a novel idea! Sarcasm detector explodes. Concur. Orville Nation says, some of us hear more voices than others. We should talk privately, Orville Nation. But as I was saying, I don't own those sins. I own my sins. I own my problems, and I can only try to be a decent person in the end. If you believe that Christianity is good for you, I'm more than happy to have a discussion and challenge your perspective and why it's not. Yes, I'm that guy. I'm the one who goes, so why do you believe it? Why do you go to church? And if I talk somebody out of going to church, I see it similarly to as Reverend Mother in The Sound of Music. Yeah, she talked her out of being a nun and dedicated to the nunnery, and is instead going to be a mother and raise children.
That's it.
It's not about picking. It's not about scoring the correct religion. And
yeah, I feel like if you're gonna, to me, what matters is if you're gonna believe with all your heart. Believe because you genuinely feel that calling. Don't do it out of an obligation to somebody else, because that taints the work. Do it because you genuinely feel that calling and you want to move forward with that particular set of morals and beliefs. And if you do that, if you're willing to do that, I can't see anyone having a lack of respect for you, so long as you're also respectful back.
Yeah, and Glenda writes in, opinions and beliefs have to be able to stand in the face of adversity. I completely agree with that. If your beliefs can't stand to scrutiny, it might just be because you need to evaluate and maybe and it doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong, it just means that a certain aspect of what you believe could probably use a little tweaking. That's what I've had to do through my life. There was a time when I was a diehard Bible thumper to the point where Corione probably wouldn't be on this show with me, and I probably wouldn't even have a following because I was so arrogant, and still kind of am. But I'm getting better. I'm trying to get better. And that's all we can really do in the end. I respect Corione's right to exist and have ideas. I respect every single one of you in this chat watching this show, whether right now live or in the podcast tomorrow or whenever. As long as you respect my right to exist and have ideas, I don't care if we agree. I don't
That's
care if the only thing we have in common is like agreeing that Deep Space Nine is the greatest Star Trek ever. Cool. Good enough for me. In fact, I would rather have that belief, because I've learned politics is a fickle mistress. Do not make friendships based off of political similarity, because the reality is you actually have less in common with people that you think you vote with than you do anyone else for any other reason. I have more in common with people loving the sound of music, Star Trek, Star Wars. Those are the things that I have more in touch with. Music in general, just different tastes in music, partying. I can get along with anybody as long as we're not going to kill each other. And guys, it's not that hard. It's really not.
Yeah. I mean, look, you don't have to be... I'm going to probably shake the foundations of arguing on the internet, but look, you don't have to be politically in lockstep with another human being.
You don't have to be... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, have your own beliefs. If a political party happens to share enough of those beliefs that you agree with their stance on things and you want to vote for them, do. But it's no one else's business who you vote for. And it's every single bit a personal choice. That's why we have a secret ballot, so you don't have to share that information, right? Look.
Hold on. Arende writes in, I also like the sound of silence. All right. So anyway.
Yeah, anyway. Look, the political side of things, look, you don't have to be in political lockstep with a party. You can even freely say, like, yeah, I voted for this guy, but I don't follow him on everything. There's a lot I disagree with, but I just disagreed with everybody else more, right? That's a completely reasonable place to be in. And it doesn't matter who ultimately an individual votes for. What matters is what they believe, what they will share with everybody, and how we go about the sharing in a respectful manner, that even if you may disagree with somebody's position, you can have a discussion about it in a reasonable and fair and non-name-cally, fist-fighty kind of way.
Yep. And if you're worried about certain individuals getting into certain positions of power, then perhaps what we need to evaluate is how much power that person has access to in those positions, not whether or not those people get there. Because I'm of the belief, and I've had my fair share of gloating, and I've been down those roads. I've done the stupid things. I've been a dick. And I probably will in some other way. But I've also learned from that, in looking back on that and kind of shaking my head at myself, going, really, what good did that bring in the end? It didn't. It just satisfied my own personal ego and some false sense of camaraderie that doesn't actually exist. I don't care what you believe in, what you vote for. If you're the losing team, your reaction in an election should be, oh, maybe next time. That's how little impact that losing an election should have on anyone's life, regardless of how you vote.
Winning with grace is just as important to also lose with grace, right? And the truth of the matter is, if your party didn't succeed, well, maybe you need to figure out a way for next time to make a better case, right? Maybe you need to figure out what those people need that didn't vote for you and come up with a way to bring them onto your side in a way that does make sense to them.
Careful, right? Arende, you're going down a dangerous path agreeing with my sense of humor. You're going to find it gets darker and darker, and I'm getting to areas I don't even want to go to yet, if at all. Yeah. Frankly, we're going to need a scent dog, a lantern, and a rope to get in and find you and yank you back out. Get me out of my own idealism. That might actually be a thing. That
would be kind of a fun discussion at some point, but anyway.
Yeah, and the other thing is, too, we also got to remember, guys, this is turning into an interesting show, but you know what? It actually fits because it fits the theme of the movie, in a way.
It does.
When we mean restore respect into discourse, I want to clarify, we don't mean necessarily talking as amicably as Corione and I do on this show. That's not always going to be the case. There are going to be blow-ups. You are going to get mad at somebody. You might even get mad at me and have a screaming match with me someday. And that's okay. I'm not mad about having screaming matches. What I care about is what we do after the fact. Because It's after the dust settles. And do we come back to the table that matters? And that's what I think we need to start with. And we need to recognize that modern debating is a joke. Because it is. It's not about winning the debate. It's simply about getting the other person to understand your perspective. And if they do agree with you, that's their decision. That's not yours. It doesn't mean anything, because if someone chooses not to listen to you, one, take a step back. Ask yourself, okay, how did my message come through? And I have had to do this lots of times, especially arguing on the internet. And I don't even like to argue on the internet. I like to just share ideas now. But I've had to watch myself and go, okay, a text-based medium where emotion cannot be properly conveyed, it is best to conduct yourself with assuming the best and assuming good intentions. Because until someone outright says, no, I hate you, screw you, you're bad, it's better to assume good faith in having a productive discussion. In doing so, someone who might have originally planned to give you the finger by the end might be persuaded in seeing that you're actually hoping for the best in them. That alone could change someone's mind and attitude because you set that example. So what I do...
I was going to say, I think the best example of that was the discussion that we actually had about secrets in the craft. And how, you were dramatically opposed to the concept of secrets in religion, which I respect. Yeah, and absolutely. But I was able to sit down and go, okay, these are the reasons why we have them. This is the logic behind it. And at the end of it, while you still are not a big fan of secrets in religion, you could understand where the logic was coming from. And, it may not be for you, and that's totally fine. But we were able to share an understanding because we both were willing to take the time, let the other person make their case, bring back points for clarification back and forth, and try to find common ground. Even if we were never going to agree on the issue, we could sit down and make it understandable to the other side. And once you've got understanding there, look, that's really some of the best stuff you can have, right? You're not going to agree with everyone. You're not going to disagree with everyone, but you can make the effort to understand their position and try to be respectful of that position whenever possible.
Yep. Arende writes in, says, the best way to fight the darkness is to just light a candle. Well, that's one way to do it. And then, of course, you'll definitely be fighting the darkness when you accidentally set yourself on fire. Galinda, of course, follows that up unless there's a gas leak. There we go.
Yeah.
Mahalo Oregon says, I love it. Great show tonight. Thank you. And judging by the profile picture, that is actually my Aunt Alicia. Thank you so much again for tuning in. And Galinda.
Hi, Aunt Alicia.
Galinda says, and also, I probably shouldn't have said her full name without asking. Whoops.
Beep.
Oopsie. Galinda says, I don't debate to be right, I debate to learn. That's where I'm
That's
at.
awesome.
I agree, because life is not about being right, guys. Let me just take it back to Arrogant Parker for a minute, or excuse me, Arrogant Petey. I forget my own name. And let's examine from that perspective for a second, where he's massively insecure about his beliefs. He thinks he's on the right team because he's been told he's on the right team. And if he's not right, then everyone else must be wrong. And that's how I used to be. I used to be very much like I had to be right. Well, no, I don't. And I wasn't. I have my personal beliefs for my reason, and I love getting into those discussions on the Rogue Council. But I also have come to the realization that out of almost 8 billion individual minds and ideas, and 6,000 currently active and known religions, I don't believe that's counting the dead religions.
Of which there are several, and all of them are kind of cool, actually.
Several thousand more on top of the 6,000. It's a bit absurd to assume that out of 8 billion people and 6,000 known religions, that I scored the correct one. Now, I may have scored the correct one for me. Rion may have scored the correct one for him.
Yep.
And other great people who are also open with their faith, like a quick shout out to Cameron Pasha, not that he needs it. Yeah. Openly Sufi Muslim who's diehard about his beliefs, but is also respectful of everybody else. It's not that hard! It's really not that hard. Arende says, at the Writer Brothers, You can edit out the section at the end of the stream if you want to remove her. Yeah, and I probably will if she's that worried about it. I'd assume she'd probably be messaging right now. Don't use my real name, which, sorry. Won't happen again. No, it probably will happen again because I'm a dumbass.
Well, we are glad to have everybody here.
Yes.
Regardless of who you are and what you believe, we think you're awesome. We want you to continue to believe what you want to believe. I personally hope that, when your time comes, you go where you believe you should go. Where your faith says the good, decent, reasonable people go. I absolutely hope you go there. And, I hope the same for everybody, regardless of what your belief is. My whole piece is, look, so long as you're not actively causing harm to other people, you're okay in my books.
That's the line for me, is consent. That's the universal moral constant is consent. As long as you're not violating someone else's decision making and you're not hurting people, I don't care. You believe whatever you want. You think that free college is a thing, that's fine. Actually, it is. Heritage Foundation has some stuff for that. Not that I wanted to plug them. I just immediately thought of free college. I'm like, wait a minute, there is actual free college courses out there. There are places that can offer that.
And I will say this about the whole college debate, and I think this is where I'm going to leave that one. Is it used to be
get off that easy.
Oh, okay. Here we go. It 100% used to be that post-secondary education was optional, but needed for certain types of jobs that required a higher education to be able to understand the underpinnings of the job.
Right. And
These days, however,
let's reference this real quick to our military captain hero, Captain Von Trapp. I don't want a high school dropout in command of a naval warship.
Exactly. Right. So I get that, but now that almost 90% of the jobs, let's say, I think it's probably over that, require some sort of post-secondary education. If we as a society have agreed we're going to provide a sufficient education that anybody can have a job, if the requirements have now shifted that you need post-secondary to have a job, well, it seems to me the logical carrying requirement of that society then would be to provide post-secondary education as part of your education plan for your country and not make people pay for it. Only pay for those things that would go above and beyond what would normally be expected in society. To me, that's just a reasonable, logical place to be. I do, however, think that clearly we would have to do a lot of reform and a lot of changes to how we run things in order to be able to pull that off. I'm not saying it would be easy. I'm saying that if we've made that decision as a society, then we need to follow through on it.
Yep. And speaking of requiring post-secondary education, I just looked at the time. So if there's any last thoughts on Sound of Music, please get them out real quick, or think about them while I read these fan mails from Matt and Arende. Matt writes in, "It is evident to people a free mind that of having their own sovereignty, that others also possess the same right to autonomous dominion of their persons." If I'm remembering correctly, I believe that's a Jefferson quote. Could also be John Adams. Either way, two great minds when it comes to base liberty. Arende writes in, "I just made up my own mind as far as religion is concerned." Well, do we gotta burn someone tonight? No, I'm just kidding.
Hey!
I thought you'd join me on this, because look at the garbage he believes. Taking bits from Buddhism and Hermetic teachings, quantum mechanics. I'm just... You said you like my humor, Arende? You're getting the ball-busting version of that. No, that's awesome. That's what I believe. Yeah. That's what I took an oath to. I rose my right hand and I pledged an oath to the Constitution, and to me that oath still continues to this day. And I mean, I believe that the Bill of Rights is human rights. And so with the first one, Congress shall make no law prohibiting or, promoting an establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. I believe that 100%. And that's awesome that you've done that. You found pieces that agree with you that make sense. I'm always happy to have a debate and really discussion debate anytime.
Yep.
Matt writes in, "Nope, that was from me." Well, that sounded very Jeffersonian, so I agree with it either way.
Yeah, well, then, congratulations. You've got the kind of quote that hopefully will get you into the history books.
No,
now, all you got to do is something really cool.
He already is. He's writing into the Writer Brothers.
Well, yeah, I mean, that automatically makes him a maker of history, but...
Yeah. Oh, I saw that. I missed some. Yeah, sorry. Facebook's not populated properly on my system.
Okay.
I apologize. So, but it was just Matt. You know what? Here's what he wrote. And this is a few minutes out of date, so bear with me. Matt writes in, philosophy generally teaches that each person is responsible for the effects they have in the world, but never for the effect that others do or have had. So as long as they have not, through their own means, been the causation of others' actions. A man who votes only for his party out of loyalty and not ideals held as a traitor to his country, where he has forsook decency for conformity, greatness, or uniformity, and his mind for order. Again, I'm going to assume that's you again, but that also sounds very Jeffersonian.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why I think Jefferson...
Sorry, real quick. Mahalo writes in, gotta head out. Great show. Thank you, guys. Until next time. Yes, you can catch the rest of it at your own leisure. We have it uploaded and free for everybody to see, but thank you for coming, Alicia. Have a good night. Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, and feel free to jump in on any of our other shows.
Glenda, it's funny you mentioned that, because I honestly kind of thought I might possibly be a Jefferson reincarnation, too. But again, that's self-inflating the ego when I put it like that. I'm just saying, I need to get a shirt, and I think this could probably be like, we could almost make this a Writer Brothers shirt, but I don't know, might be a little too political. But I just want a picture of Jefferson and the text, Jefferson was right. Because while in practice he didn't quite fulfill his idealism, unfortunately, he wasn't wrong. He was right about individual liberty, and the first draft of the Declaration of Independence is one of the greatest documents ever penned. Unfortunately, he had to cut out the part that freed the slaves, which is a bummer's putting it lightly, but at the same time, if you study history, yeah, it was a hard call to make.
And you got to figure too, at that period in time, right? One, that would have been a very controversial piece to have there, and two, look, you gotta, like, Jefferson, at the end of the day, he's just like us. He's a man. He's gonna make mistakes. He's gonna have flawed stuff, but he's still gonna try, and he's still gonna strive, and he's still gonna try to point out the things that he thinks needs to be changed for the better. I've got no problem with the guy, even if he did fall short of his own ideals. He made the effort.
Yeah. I think he got to a point, and when at the end of his life, he did set the example of free his slaves. I do wish he had done it sooner, but again, I think he just got to a point where he had to accept that he wasn't going to see it in his lifetime. And that's unfortunate for him, and of course for Betsy Ross, who was also a reformist. And it's just, that's the thing, is the Declaration was actually cranked out, and I studied this again recently with having watched 1776, and that's when I realized, man, there just wasn't a whole lot of time to make that decision, whether or not the North was going to fight on its own, but then the Continental Congress decided to add the stipulation, no, we're united in this or we're not. And yeah, that's the unfortunate rule of compromise.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a necessary thing at the time, because there was no way the two factions were going to be able to not coordinate and beat the British. It needed to be a coordinated effort.
Yeah, well, at the same time, I think some people point out the whole, we had help from the French, which, sure, that helped in the attrition point of the war, and it's like, well, if the North had it, then they could have dealt with the South after. But it's all stuff that we can learn from. It's all stuff that we can take and move forward with, instead of trying to rewrite and wish that history had been better. Yeah, that's why I love the movie The Patriot. It's historically inaccurate, and it's not, and that's fine. But it's the idea that movie brings forth, the idea that was put in those founding documents, the idea that I still believe in and still want to strive for, and that much of the world, I think, can still be blessed with. That's what I take away from it. And so, you know what? Yeah, Jefferson could have done better. He still did better than most, and maybe we'll see the day when a Jefferson type finally does stand up and actually help facilitate worldwide freedom for all individuals.
Which would be awesome.
Just let's not do the Klaus Schwab one world government crap. I'm not. I'm also
Fair
not
enough.
really for establishing the U.S. Constitution as a world government entity. I think that certain bylaws should exist, but at the end of the day, we also have to remember each country does have the right to decide for itself. And, some amendments that work in the United States, might not work in other countries. And that's something that I have to remind myself of. That while I do think that first the Bill of Rights is human rights,
not everyone shares the same philosophy, and we've got to leave room for other people to have other ideas.
And speaking of other ideas and free college education, moving on now, because we are pressed for time, to our... Go ahead.
Yeah, to Deep Space Nine! Our favorite place to be!
I have absolutely loved getting back into this show, and I've really enjoyed the slow drip of only doing a couple episodes a week, because it really gives me time to think on it afterwards and really appreciate, especially these two powerhouse episodes that just... Oh man, I forgot how good Season 1 really is. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Matt Moser says, I'd love to debate contractualism with you guys sometime. Matt, if you got a camera and whatnot, we could definitely bring you on the Rogue Council, and if you're interested in joining our pop culture every Tuesday night, we can talk about that. Feel free to message me if you're interested. But Rogue Council is only bi-weekly. And JRC99 US writes in, woo, DS9. Welcome to the show. Please like, subscribe, and share. Q-Less is arguably one of the best, well, it is one of the best Deep Space Nine episodes, easily in the top 10, but also one of the best episodes in all of Star Trek, in my opinion. Now, of course, in my Star Trek opinion, most of the best episodes come from DS9, so I got a little bit of a bias.
Okay.
I mean, by a little bit, I mean, you know, like, you ever meet one of those car guys that only drives Chevys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you familiar with the type?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I am that type. That's kind of how I am when it comes to my Star Trek.
So, with this episode, we really get the opportunity to fill in on a previously dangling plot hook from Next Gen, where Vosh, Picard's on-again, off-again girlfriend, and Q ran off to explore the universe. And now we find Vosh is back, and she's got a whole bunch of artifacts and items from her adventures, and she's looking to make a quick buck, because why wouldn't you want to make a quick buck? But Q shows up and kind of reminds everybody maybe they still need their good old buddy Q. Well, everybody except Sisko, because Sisko just decks him.
Arende writes in, says, ironically, I drive a Chevy Malibu. Boy, this is just... Why do I get the feeling that when we finally do Ryder Brothers live in person, that we're going to end up finding a fence somewhere in Key West, and we're just going to have to dress up as the respective King of the Hill characters that we either physically resemble or ideologically identify, and we're going to open the show, one episode, with... Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, drink.
It would have to transition to our theme, because we could only do 15 seconds of the actual King of the Hill song.
Yeah, we'd have to get it remixed, I think.
Arende writes in, you punched me! Picard never punched me! And Galinda follows up with, haha, I love that Sisko decked Q, and I'm a pacifist for the most part. Well, you know, Galinda, pacifism doesn't actually mean non-violence. I mean, unless you are specifically non-violent. It just means that you gotta wait till you've been poked enough times. And for me, it's once. For other people, like Corione, it's probably 5 or 6 times. And for you, it might be 30 times, and that's why you think that you're a non-violent pacifist, which, cool. Good for you.
I mean, to me, my whole feeling on violence and whatnot is, look, I generally feel like if I have to resort to some sort of violence, that it represents my lack of ability to resolve it in any other means, and it means a failure on my part. That being said, as my daddy said, if it's worth fighting for, it's worth fighting dirty for.
Yeah, and yeah, it's entirely circumstantial, but I am 100% a believer. Let's see. Bucket Moonlight, get it? No, I don't. You got that one, Corione?
No.
Water Moonlight, Bucket Moonlight, Pale...
In the pale moonlight, yes.
Nice. Thank you for being
greatest episode of Trek ever to be put on.
Well, don't oversell it for
in my opinion.
I think it's okay. It's not the. So some people that are on this panel that are currently not here are watching it for the first time. So we do ask to let's just try to avoid spoilers. Obviously, I'm not going to ban you from the show unless you start being an ass, but just keep that in mind. Otherwise, that was a pretty solid emoji reference. I like that.
But we are talking about Q-Less right now.
Q-Less, yes. And that is, and Q, of course, retorts with, well, you're easier to provoke then. And we never see Q on DS9 again. Oh, man, whoops, spoilers. But I think it was kind of implied.
To be fair, I mean, when you feel the back of Sisko's pimp hand, you go away, right? And the truth of the matter is, look, this was really an important episode in a lot of ways for Sisko because it really set him apart as a captain as a commander, the lead, if you will, in his own right. He wasn't Kirk. He wasn't Picard. He's not anybody else. He's his own man.
He's the best of both those worlds in himself.
Well, yes, I think so. I think Sisko is, in my opinion, I feel like Sisko is the best captain out of the bunch. If only because he had the most even-handed approach to dealing with the very serious problems he had.
Glenda writes in, Avery Brooks is an amazing actor. I completely agree.
Yep.
JRC points out, Q only returns only if he knew he could get under people's skin. And I think that's what he realized, that Sisko has no time for shit. Like, Picard says he doesn't, and Picard pretends to be annoyed, but Picard secretly likes meeting with Q because it's a chance to, interact with a super being that you wouldn't otherwise get. Sisko hears Q's there, and it's battle stations, like, we are in trouble. I want this threat neutralized and off my station as quickly as possible. And he's all business when it comes to that.
Yeah, I'd also argue that there's a good argument, I think, to be made that there are near omnipotent beings already taking an interest in Sisko. So maybe leave him be. He's got his own.
He's got divine protection.
Yeah, maybe it's not a good idea to go screwing with the prophets. Like, just as a thought, right?
Yeah. Notice how Q never references the wormhole or the prophets. And the only other ambiguous thing we have with Q is when he interacts with Guinan, and it's like, so you do have vulnerability as well.
Right. I mean, that leads me to believe that maybe Q realized who was being Sisko's guardian angels and kind of went, this isn't a fight I want to particularly take on. But I would also argue that Q is there to teach. Now, he teaches by being a jerk, but he does teach.
Ah, yes, the ball-busting philosophy.
Right. We've all had that professor in school that felt that the best way to teach you was to make your life miserable for a little while. I feel like that's what Q does a lot of the way, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you a textbook example of this. I had a really early morning class for one of my classes for my degree, and the teacher walked in and said, all right, in this class, we are going to be participating in the law of conservation of grades. Everybody right now is getting a D in this course. If the number of people decrease, then everybody's grade goes up by the amount of people that have dropped. And if you specifically are the reason that they cite for dropping this course, I'll give you a bonus. So, as you can imagine, the class got real cutthroat real fast.
It sounds like it would make for a good episode of Lower Decks, not gonna lie.
Yeah, right?
Alright, some fan mail to catch up on. Let's see. Arende says, I can be aggressive, but I abhor violence. You will know if you're annoying me, though, fast. Yeah, that's fair. And personally, I'm a 100% supporter of defensive violence. If the gates of hell are descending upon your land and your life, and you decide you're going to go out with a blaze of glory, there's a small chance I might come join you just because I agree. No one should be encroaching upon anyone's lives. Next we have, some of these got out of order. Let's see. Arende again says he did some things that qualify as war crimes, though. We will definitely get into those. And Matt writes in, do you guys know Star Trek only exists because of Lucille Ball? Yes. And it's a very important thing to realize, because with all the Twitter babies out there going, I oppose racism and sexism and all this stuff that are virtue signaling. Well, that's fine to start with, I guess, but you also have to realize, if Gene Roddenberry and Lucille Ball hadn't tolerated racists and actual racists and sexists, let's be real. The people of the showrunners of the 60s were a special kind of scum, an actual kind of scum. There would be no Star Trek. So, if you say you don't tolerate racists and sexists, I think you need to go back and rewatch the show.
I would also say this. Look.
Now that said, I do want to mention. That said, we are only human. We only have so much energy for each other. If you need to take time away and can only spend so much trying to reason with people, I get you. I understand. I have to stop myself. I have to give myself social media breaks from time to time, because I get wrapped up in my own BS. And so it's okay. We don't, like I said, we don't all have to be buddies. It's okay to take breaks, and it's okay to stand by your convictions. However, if you're one of those people that shuts down the discussion because I don't tolerate racism, then you would be the reason why Star Trek wouldn't exist. If you were Gene Roddenberry with that attitude, there would be no Star Trek.
Yeah.
Or Lucille Ball with that, I should also say. Because yes. And thank you to the memory of Lucille Ball, giving us such an amazing show. Yeah. Sisko punched Q. Picard and Janeway tried to reason with Q. That's what JRC writes in. Yeah, and that's the problem. Sisko reasoned with Q pretty effectively. Reasoned him with fists. And then Kozik Wallace says, you'd think after everything he's done, Starfleet, he definitely has a price on his head. I think that is... For Starfleet, that's going to... Well, Section 31 could have a bounty open on him, actually.
Well, I would argue that instead... I think what he did for Starfleet was kick them in the butt the way they didn't like, but for the right reasons. If you think about it, Starfleet never would have been in a position to be able to take on the Borg if it wasn't for Q giving them a heads up. If you consider that even the time that Q was mortal, he saved an entire civilization by getting them to think outside the box. Consider all the other opportunities and situations where Q showed up, where at the end of the day, everyone was frustrated by his presence, but they learned something incredibly valuable and gained insight and unique knowledge that they couldn't have gained any other way. You start to realize that, yes, Q's a dick, but he's a dick that actually cares about humanity in his own twisted way. And when you think about that, when you think about it from Starfleet's perspective, somebody up the chain of command is going to be like, okay, he may be a jerk, but he's our jerk.
Glenda writes in, Section 31 might have tried to recruit the Continuum. And sadly, there's an episode opportunity missed.
Right.
Section 31 goes in the wormhole, tries to recruit the wormhole aliens, and they're never heard for. There's no more Section 31. Star Trek CIA. Anyway.
It would be an interesting series. It's too bad that Kurtzman will never get it off the air, or get competent showrunners to actually run it for him.
Yeah, and I'll admit, because I do try not to let my bias persuade me. After watching season 2 of Discovery, when I thought the show actually had promise, I thought a Section 31 show would have been cool. And then Discovery season 2 ended the way it did, and I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought that the way to do a quality Star Trek series would be to do it in the next gen timeline, but have a team that is going from place to place, and do it like an ensemble show, kind of like a Dead Man's Gun kind of situation, where they're potentially on a different ship every week, and it's telling a story about a specific kind of event that happens on these ships, and the people that are brought in from outside to try to deal with it.
Kind of like an anthology, which is
exactly,
honestly, yeah, to sound like I care about people's opinions. I got another. Rosalie Hammond writes in through Facebook, says, "Rad beard, Parker." Thank you, Rose. I appreciate it, and welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. I basically am at the point, and yeah, it's kind of like an olive branch to the hardcore Kurtzman fans. Because here's the thing, guys. At the end of the day, we can argue over which Star Trek is better, but we also have to remember Gene Roddenberry, while he did not like Star Trek 2, as far as I can research and recall, he never bashed a fan for loving that movie.
Nope.
And that's what I tried. And I'm not trying to say this as though I know what's best for everyone, because I don't. I'm just trying to look at that and reflect that idea and that image by pointing out the fact that we've got to remember to respect each other as fans. Even if, regardless of what other people do, that's their business. But at the end of the day, I see it this way. To fix all the incongruities and all the discontinuities and all the problems, I see it like this. Star Trek is essentially a multiverse anthology. It takes place, there's different events that can happen in different timelines of it. Now, some people aren't fans of the multiverse concept and they want to have their for sure canon. Guys, you can have that too. We refer to when I refer to the Star Trek Prime line, I basically refer to everything from TOS to Enterprise. That's Prime Trek. And that will always be Prime Trek. Everything else beyond that, I think, is just best to be left alone at this point. Consider it the Prime timeline. I mean, I even put the original series as its own thing in of itself. It's a whole separate entity on its own. It's not really fair to...
Well, I think you can add the animated series in with original Trek.
TAS, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Arende writes in, says, "I don't see anything but slightly amused, apathy, and disdain from the Q Continuum if Section 31 had managed to actually reach them and try to recruit them."
I think they'd just laugh and laugh and laugh.
Yeah, right. Knowing Q, he'd probably join them.
just to mess with them, yeah.
Just to screw. Yeah, and then they're like, "Hey, Q, you didn't show up to this morning's meeting again. Oh, oops."
It's like, and what are you gonna do about it exactly, right? Like, it's not like you can kick me out of the super secret boy band, right?
Exactly. JRC writes in, "As much as I like Enterprise, the problem was making prequels instead of the standard TNG formula of continuing to the future, not to the past, and unless it was episodes like Trials and Tribulation." So again, Enterprise is technically kind of its own timeline as well, because there's that episode where they address First Contact interfering with the timeline and changing certain events. So, yeah, I would say that the idea of Enterprise is part of the timeline, but the show itself is kind of its own timeline as well. And then, of course, the same with Discovery, Strange New Worlds, all that stuff. I don't care if you like it or love it. There's no getting away from it. There's no undoing any of it. It can all exist in its own universe, and that's why I love multiverses, because now it's like we can have... Some people are worried about retconning and bringing back original characters, which sure, there's that danger, but they're not really the same.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, you are free to like J.J. Abrams' Trek, absolutely. You know, if you like it, go for it, enjoy it.
Look, say what you will about Star
I didn't
Trek
find it
Into
a fan of myself, but I'm totally fine with other people watching it.
Yeah, say what you will about those movies, okay? But they still did the Enterprise right in those movies. That was at least treated well.
I still feel like, you know, we had the giant spaces on board ships. Like, you know...
all right, some of the space was definitely taken a little too... I agree. The Budweiser beer factory engineering was a little...
Yeah, right. I mean, like, you know, it felt more like a Carnival cruise ship than it did, you know, a military vessel doing military things. Just because it was, like, too clean, almost. Right? Like, you know, between the lens flares and... Okay, but between the lens flares and all the white deck, I felt like I was going to be getting, like, white poisoning, right? Yes. Like, you've seen the torture videos on those?
Those were the visuals that were meant to attract the newer audience and a new generation of Star Trek fans. And yes, they did clean it up. It's a different, like I said, it's a different timeline.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like, look, you're free to like it. You're free to enjoy it. I have some conflicting views on it. I would say that I actually did like Chris Pine's performance. I did like Zachary Quinto's performance. To
add to that, Rinshar writes in, gotta give Carl Urban props though. 100,000% agree. Best character on that.
I have such a man crush on Carl Urban. He can do no wrong in my eyes.
What straight man doesn't? Let's be real.
Right? Okay. You know, but like that whole cast, I don't think there was somebody that they cast to take over those roles that didn't give it their absolute all and try their very, very best to do justice to those characters.
Yeah.
So 100% the actors I have zero problem with.
So Rin Shar and I actually many years ago had a discussion about, and JRC brings up lens flare seizures. And I'm like, and that reminds me of a discussion we had about our concerns of giving JJ the keys to Star Wars.
Right.
And that it would basically just be lens flare the movie, where instead of a movie, they just have you recline in your seats and they open the top of the theater and the sun shines and it's blinding. And then that's your JJ movie that's peak JJ movie experience right there. Thankfully that hasn't happened.
It's kind of like the exact opposite of a Grateful Dead concert.
Yeah. Or when you turn on the lightsaber, that's all you can see during the fight scene is just lens flare the whole fight, and all you hear is the whooshing and whatnot, but because they're so bright.
I mean, I'd probably still watch that freely, like admittingly. Like if somebody told me like it's an hour and a half of lens flare, but there's lightsabers, I'd probably be in anyway.
Yep. Let's see. We'll catch up real quick. Glenda says Urban is amazing as McCoy. 100% agree. Randy says Carl Urban is such a good actor. Aomer, Butcher, McCoy, all amazingly portrayed. Yeah, I forgot his character in Chronicles of Riddick too. He's really good.
Yeah. And don't forget Dredd. He is the perfect Dredd.
I like the Stallone version, but oh my gosh, his movie was criminally underrated. Like, it was such a great film.
Yeah.
Rinshar says, killing the villains with Beastie Boys and stuff like that is a bridge too far for me, though. I have to disagree. Yeah. I think that Star Trek Beyond is a very true to form the original series movie. Now, it leans more on the original series cheese side because of what you just mentioned. I'll grant you that. It's not, like, super serious, but you can tell Justin Lin is a fan of Star Trek, and he really tried to get away from Into Darkness and make Beyond stand out. And I felt he did an amazing job. It was just, by then, the interest was so dead.
So here's what I would say. One of the things that Star Trek has always missed is it goes from like 40s, 30s era culture to super modern, and it misses like the 1900s almost entirely. Like we see guys on Next Generation, they're listening to classical music and whatnot, right? But you got to remember, like, to them, classical music and like the Beastie Boys would still be in the same category at that period of time, right? You know, it's practically tribal drumming to them, you know, in terms of like where it is in the timeline. So, you know, them pulling out, like them trying to modernize it for our audience by using more modern music.
I wouldn't call that song modern.
No, like more. I'm saying more modern, more modern than like, you know, Brahms, right? Or like Mozart. Like we're getting slightly farther along.
Now there's an alternate scene for you when they kill them with some Beethoven.
Right, like you could have in theory put any song in there and potentially it could have worked. I liked the attempt to bring more modern music, more modern culture in, because you got to figure there'd be somebody on board a Federation ship like Malloy from Orville, right? Like that like was obsessed with like 21st century like tech and culture and whatnot. So I'm okay with it. I didn't particularly like the scene, but I like the attempt.
Yeah.
And that's what counted to me.
Ridshar writes in, though. He says, this has always been a classic Trek problem. When Data... excuse me, I said that wrong because he didn't capitalize it. When Data assembles the ultimate group of scientists to play poker with, they're all people we know. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, like you'd think there'd be like some like, you know, like Daystrom would be in the equation or something, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's silly, it's cheese. I'm not gonna say that. And then the whole riding the motorcycle thing, but like I said, it's an adventure action movie that I felt did a better job of feeling more original series than Into Darkness did. Into Darkness is a guilty pleasure of mine, but I know that movie's not It's cool. It's got cool moments, but it's popcorn. It's popcorn flick. It's turn your brain off and enjoy spaceship fly. I mean, the Enterprise porn in Into Darkness is on point.
Okay,
So much
so
ship.
I've got a cut of Into Darkness you need to watch because it replaces all of Benedict Cumberbatch's scenes with his scenes from The Hobbit as Smaug.
That would definitely be entertaining. Or anyway,
Right, it's perfect.
well, there is a magic carpet ride in Star Trek First Contact.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was perfect.
That was a little more appropriate, though, because that's still set, 65 years from now. Or set, no, because I'll be 74 when we finally make First Contact. It's 40 years from now. So that's still at least a little closer, but good point.
Yep. No, I'm with you, right? I mean, these are attempts to try to fix that problem that Trek has had, right?
Yeah.
And I would love to see, straight up, I would love to see a Malloy-like character who's like obsessed with like the 80s or something on a on a Star Trek series. I think that would be great.
There's an episode of Futurama that does exactly that.
Yeah.
No, but that would be, well, they kind of did in Next Gen, sort of. Like, they didn't really have the 80s. Wait, yeah, they did. Because it was current
they did.
to the time.
Because it was current.
They just didn't have the 80s guy that we were hoping.
Right.
We're not going to invite them Romulans to the party, right? It's like, wow, dude, you're going to fit in well in this timeline. No, seriously.
Right.
So, you don't take them pointy-eared bastards here. Oh, no, wait, that's a Vulcan. My bad.
No, we like them pointy-eared guys. We don't like them other pointy-eared guys.
Them other pointy-eareds. Something wrong with them. Anyway, Star Trek classic racism aside. Speaking of racism, in Dax, we have quite an interesting conundrum of the mind to deal with. This is Deep Space Nine. Some people argue it's not true sci-fi at times, and that's true. It is the least sci-fi of the Star Treks by technicality. I won't argue that point that TNG explored more nuanced sci-fi concepts, whereas Deep Space Nine kind of focuses more on the drama and the more cerebral aspects of some of these concepts.
And some of the social issues, too.
But in a perfect marriage of both sci-fi concept and social concept, we have the episode known as Dax, which not only does some world building of the Trill species, but also brings into question within the world, does the Dax symbiote have to be held responsible for its past lives? This was quite a compelling episode, and I really was impressed overall just with how well acted the whole thing was, and of course the twist at the end was very it was good, and it really, yeah. So, I got some new fan mail to catch up on. Glenda writes in, Dax is an incredible character. It had to be a blast to write the character. Oh, I bet. And then Rinchar follows up, they play with a lot more economic ideas than any other Trek on DS9, though, and do it with good sci-fi concepts. I 100% agree with that statement. And you're right, because... So, what I've said before, and I'm going to repeat every single week, just in case anybody misses this point, TNG is the utopian idea. It's Gene Roddenberry's vision, more or less fully realized, right? We have the grand flagship, basically the USS Space Titanic, which is... Yeah, that's a good analogy, actually, because it splits in half, and half of it goes down, while the other half goes up. It works for the Enterprise D, right? Because it's so nice and pretty. We have, the values, and the core values are upheld by a captain who's basically a plank of wood, but also so much more beyond that, but he just presents himself like a plank of wood. And
the diplomat father figure, yeah.
He just looks like a plank of wood. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It's fine to be a plank of wood and be effective. I'm not saying that's bad at all. I'm just saying he's not super exciting. But that's part of the excitement of TNG, ironically.
He also chews on the scenery like only a Shakespearean actor can, though.
Yeah, I agree. I like Picard. I'm not saying everything bad.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing out the fact that, here we have the idea, the vision, basically fully realized. Deep Space Nine is the reality of it. It's the behind the scenes. It's the what holds the economy in place. It's Rinchar points out. It's what holds the economy. It's what holds all the truth behind what Paradise actually is it still strives for the vision. It just shows the struggle to get there. And we get a lot of that struggle with the Bajorans trying to reestablish themselves in the galaxy without having to sell their own souls to the Federation. We also see that continued conflict in that Deep Space Nine is now a primary commercial hub and a very important piece in the galaxy. There's just so much that goes on. So, yes, I totally agree with it. And that's why I love DS9, is because, yeah, you know what? It gets a little much in the soap opera, but you know what? That's what I like. That's the kind of stories that I write, or try to write. That's the kind of stories that I'm into. I like the world building. I like the lore. I like I like using sci-fi to tell broader stories. And that's the best way that you see that in so many good episodes coming up. But man, I forgot a good season.
Yeah, and really, this episode, I can't think of a more timely episode that has stuck with us, because really what this episode is asking at the end of the day is, do the sins of the father reflect upon the son? Right? Should we hold somebody accountable for the crimes their ancestors participated in?
Yes, to back up what you're saying, sorry to interrupt, with some fan mail from JRC, Dax as a character opened up a ton of philosophical discussion.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, and that's an interesting question, really, when you get right down to it, right? Is, you know, we often hear about how certain groups out there blame the actions of people that, you know, existed long before we all lived, right, as reasons for problems today, and they take it out on the people that, at the end of the day, really had no control over those situations. So, I mean, I think this episode encapsulates that discussion very, very well, because when you get right down to it, Jadzia had absolutely nothing to do with the events involving Curzon, right? And you have to start asking yourself, is the Dax symbiont on its own a person, or is it really just like the biological equivalent of a USB memory stick that you plug into a person and carbon copy memories to? And I don't have an answer for that. But I think it's an interesting question.
It is a great question, and I personally actually lean more towards the organic USB system. And I mean, that's kind of it's a good way of putting it. It's also kind of a cold way of putting it. Because it's
true,
so much
right?
more. There's the spiritual implications of okay, are these carrying on the well, no, we actually do address this later.
We do.
So anyway.
But it's an interesting question to bring up now, at this early point in the series, because it makes us think about it, and it makes us question Jadzia's actions going forward. Are they really her actions, or is it just a little bit of Curzon peeking out from the shadows, influencing her in a direction?
All right, so to catch up on some fan mail again, JRC writes in, Picard had the best disappointment face. Excuse me, I read that wrong.
Yes.
In all of Star Trek. And then Rin Shar says McCoy is not far behind.
DeForest Kelly face is a thing. If you get DeForest Kelly face, you done screwed up.
DeForest Kelly face is literally just "damn it, Jim," but the non-verbal version.
Well, or the "how stupid do you have to be" kind of face, right?
Man, you're dumb.
Yeah.
Arende writes in, Picard isn't just any type of wooden. I'm thinking ironwood or ebony, something that could really mess up your chainsaw. Yeah. That's what I was going for. Thank you. And
I guess here's how I look at the various captains. With Kirk, you have, I want to call him a...
Read that fan mail from Rich Sharp, please.
I don't actually have the YouTube.
Okay, sorry, never mind.
Yeah, I'm watching Twitch instead, so.
Says, alternatively, goddamn Vulcan's face.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
It's kind of a toss-up between which one you're
Vulcans, right? So Kirk to me represents the young man who is old enough now to know better, but is still going through it. Like, picture a guy that hasn't become a dad yet, but is on his way there, right? Versus Picard, that's like everybody's dad, right? And then you have Janeway, that's kind of like mama hardass, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Right? Like she cares, but she'll still whoop you if like she'll still pull her slipper off and beat you to death with it if you get out of line. And, and then we have Sisko, Cisco's a guy who is in a terrible situation and has to figure out the way to get out of it with his skin intact and still, live up to the ideals of the society around him. And that's a hard place to be. Like, he never gets an easy go of it. Right?
Yeah. No hard feelings, JRC. Like I said, we're just trying to avoid certain spoilers. But you do bring up a good point.
You absolutely do. I mean, look, there are spoilers that I'd love to be able to bring up in this conversation to point in the other direction that it isn't just a USB stick. Or a USB slug, I want to call it. The USB slug, maybe? Yeah. Although it does look kind of worm-like.
Bus, Universal Slug Bus?
Universal Slug Bus, yeah. Although it does bring up an interesting concept of space tequila involving using a symbiont as the worm. Just saying.
As I said, JRC, no hard feelings. It's all good. It's
all good.
I say no hard feelings because I don't want you to be offended if I delete your message, because we usually, unless you're a bot, trying to sell us porn or whatever, it's not. We don't turn down opinions here. Yeah, I think we came up with a secondary motto too. We really want to try to care about your opinions or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I actually wrote it. I should probably read what I wrote instead.
Yeah, it's not for the content of your comment. It's for we're trying to keep it as spoiler light as possible.
Yeah, no, I said the Writer Brothers. We actually do try to care about what about what you think.
Yeah.
Don't just blanket that everywhere. Oh, these guys care about everything. No. Well, I mean, within reason. Arende also writes in, says, Janeway could also be thought of as a slightly Mary Sue-ish. I mean, she's good at everything. So real quick, I do want to say, the character idea of Janeway was definitely there. Oh, and Rinshar adds, even her hair is unflappable.
There's actually a fun fact about her hair that I can go into.
And I'll let you take it from here after this. I do just want to say, my issue with Janeway was her inconsistency, and this is because of the showrunners and the writers. Well, not just the writers so much, but the showrunners deciding, oh, let's just do TOS, but in the Delta Quadrant. Stupid idea. It should have been more hybrid-like. DS9 is not serialized. Contrary to what people say, while it did lay the groundwork for more serialized television, it is not completely serialized. In fact, most of the first couple seasons are very episodic. It's, in my opinion, a hybrid, which I think is something a lot of shows could really consider doing
benefit
more
from.
Like, think of it imagine a Netflix-style Daredevil, for example, but occasionally you get those kind of one-off episodes in the middle of the main plot. What fun would that be?
Yeah, like a Monster of the Week kind of thing, right?
Just throw that in there, and that's why I love DS9, is because you get that episodic Monster of the Week with continuing plot arcs, and I think that would have benefited Janeway's character overall, because then we would have seen someone who makes more sense. Instead of 1 minute it's they have to uphold the directives of the Prime Directive at no costs, and then the next week it's screw that thing, I use it as toilet paper. One day she's a great philosopher and representative of the Federation. The next she's murdering Tuvix. Yeah. So I really felt that they failed Janeway because of that, because she could have been such a fantastic character. It still is in a lot of ways. The episodes I like, I can draw from.
So with Janeway's hair, though, real quick, in the initial test screenings that they did with Janeway's hair, they let her have her hair down, but the camera kept picking up her hair as like this elaborate series of flyaways. So she looked like the book description of Hermione Granger. She basically had a big red fro going on whenever she was on. That's why they had to get her to either put it in a bun, or they put so much hairspray in her hair that it was basically a helmet to prevent that weird camera issue that they were having with her hair.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I almost feel like the crazy hair would actually be an improvement.
Well, I mean, in the later episodes, right? Like, I always felt that Voyager would have done great with a bit of the remake Battlestar Galactica treatment, where things were like a little harder, pieces of the ship were breaking down. You go down a hall, one hallway would be pristine, the next hallway would have a whole bunch of crap lying in it because, that it's just no one's gotten a chance to repair it yet.
Yeah, they would definitely have their main corridors, which they'd still uphold their cleaning and their sanitation with, but then, there's going to be those other storage corridors that quickly start to build up. Rin Shar points out, I mean, Mandalorian was that way, and people ate that up. Semi-episodic, semi-serial. And that's probably why I really enjoyed Mandalorian. Was because, it was, we had a story we were going on, but then we got to go to a new planet with a new bad guy of the week. Sort of.
Yeah.
Or it was the same bad guy, just done with different... Anyway. This is where DS9 really starts to take off, though, is because we get these strong episodes right out of the gate, but then we start to get these philosophical ones that really get you to think about the circumstance and really kind of gets you to, as you said, this is a perfect example of taking sins of the father and, turning it on its side and kicking it down a flight of stairs. That's why I love sci-fi. I mean, this is what Seth MacFarlane has done with the Orville, and why, hey, renew the Orville.
Yes. But like, sci-fi should always be presenting the argument, presenting the sides, and letting the viewer make up their own mind on it. Personally, I've always felt that the sins of the father shouldn't be revisited on the son. I feel that everyone needs to be their own man. Definitely don't forget where somebody has come from, but that doesn't mean that's where they're going.
Yep. And I do want to point out too, on this show, when we do gender references or specifics, guys, it's just what we're saying from. We're not saying that only boys can carry the sins of the father. Daughters are absolved of the... No. Everyone should be able to go, oh, well, as a woman myself, I agree with that. Good. That's what we want. That's all we want. It's not about who's right or right. And I'm not offended when people... I'm not offended by two things, actually. I'm going to point these out. One, when Coriolan talks about worshiping the goddess that he chooses to worship. And two, when a woman changes the analogy to flip the roles. Great.
Yeah.
Fine with that. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, look, I was just trained in a classic English environment where the male pronoun is the default pronoun unless stated otherwise. Personally, I feel like that makes the female special, like the female pronoun kind of special and wonderful. But I can understand why not everyone would feel that way. And if you ever want to take my words and respond with the female pronouns on anything I say, by all means, go for it. I'm cool, right?
Yeah, no, again, part of restoring respect into discourse means we do need to set that example of having a base level respect for everyone. We do our best to accommodate. I'm just saying, just don't read into it too much. We're not saying men because we believe in the patriarchy. I actually, one of the reasons Coriolan and I actually started to come to an agreement very fast was because we realized men and women are great. Both have strengths, both have weaknesses. It's our weaknesses and strengths that complement each other, especially on our personal level. That's what matters. That's what makes us great as a species. Our differences are not something to be scorned or one-upped on. They're to be celebrated.
Yes.
So, Matt Moser writes in, philosophers have two different stances on that. Best discussed by Thomas Aquinas.
Yes.
I was saying that wrong. Oh, I said it right.
Thomas Aquinas.
And Frederick Hegel. Hegel?
Hegel sounds right to me.
So Aquinas was for the stance of inherited guilt. Hegel argued the opposite. And I mean, I agree that everyone needs to be given. This goes back to what I was saying earlier in the stream, guys. Everyone needs to be given the benefit of the doubt, and you want to try to have good faith. And then Rin Shar adds that Christianity is poisonous with this concept when it comes to the sins of the father. And yes, that is true. That's one of the aspects of it that I often speak against because, this is gonna sound crazy, and you're probably all gonna damn me to hell for this, but I don't believe that all of the Bible is correct. There, I said it. I think that man's influence and corruption has changed things to facilitate control mechanisms that Rin Shar brings up, in that the sins of the father was a concept that I believe was used to control bloodlines and to control who was allowed freedom and power. And I mean, there's nothing good that comes of sins of the father. There really is. I mean, I'm open to hearing it. If you guys have an argument that says it is, please share. I'm willing to listen. I don't agree with it, and I probably won't be persuaded, but I'm willing to hear your stance.
Yeah, we'll hear you out, and I mean, I'd love to be able to provide it to the rest of the audience. A different viewpoint. I think that would be good. And I will say for the record, I mean, when it comes to the Bible, look, like, this is a witch saying it, but I really like the Jefferson interpretation of the Bible that removed the fantastical elements. and kept the philosophy and the concept of, hey, let's try to be nice to each other, even though sometimes people are going to be jerks to us. To me, that's the version of the Bible I identify with. I think is a great thing.
Rinshar is also talking about, and I do love the Jefferson Bible because it brings the teachings of Jesus to an otherwise unwilling audience. Rinshar points out that basically, original sin and sins of the Father, that is actually, those are two similar concepts, but they are technically different. And again, original sin, I have a different perspective on that entirely, but that would be best saved for the Roman Council. So yeah, I mean, I can see how you can see that they're similar, but they aren't exactly the same. Arende writes in, I don't believe it's all correct. Oh my God, how dare you have critical thoughts?
Yeah. There you go.
We try to think critically.
Here's what I'd actually, suggest or recommend to every Christian out there. Read the Bible. Write down the passages, the philosophies, the pieces that make the most sense to you, and put your focus there, right? And I think you'll find that some universal concepts come out of it. And once you have that knowledge, by all means, read other holy books and see if those concepts are repeated throughout most religions. I think you'll find that they are. And I think you'll find that all of us are trying to say I think you'll find that all of us are trying to say similar things, that it's important to be kind to each other. Yeah.
And I actually, since we're coming up on the end, because we don't really have a whole lot of time to get into this, but this is good discussion, guys. Thank you for bringing these topics up. I actually shared this analogy with H. Marie recently, and I'm going to share it here because I think, again, this is another t-shirt I might have to get made, is imagine the Dark Side of the Moon prism, right? From the Pink Floyd album, The Light Prism. So the way I currently see it right now is like this. You have the white light coming into the prism. Let's call that the word of the one true God. The absolute, this is the correct God, right? Well, we exist in what I would consider a fractured mirror of the spiritual world. And so when the message of the one true God tries to get through to our realm, our existence, it gets fractured and it splinters. And so one light prism you could have represent Christianity, another you could have represent Islam, another you could have represent Wicca, or I guess, which would probably offshoot into several others, like Christianity is gonna hit several more prisms on the way down. But that's basically what I think it is, because there's a lot of similarities that we can draw from and find that common. And it's, I think that's really, you think you found the one true God, that's great for you personally, that's fine. That doesn't justify being shitty towards other people. It's because I think that in the end, we probably all do happen to worship the same entity. And I think that the best way to summarize what matters here and now, most of all, was what Stallone said in Samaritan. The capacity for good and evil resides within us all. There's no, regardless of your personal faith, there's no disputing that fact. It's simply there. JRC says, I am a Christian apologist by hobby, and I love discussions like this. And Rinchar says, you are so close to Kabbalah right now. Okay. Arende says, seriously, if more people chose to actually think critically like you do, PD, there would be a lot less conflict. Instead, people choose to take offense or worse. So, Arende, I think that is a simplification of the overall issue. And yes, I do want to have a philosophy-themed show on this channel very soon. I mean, we kind of have it with the Rogue Council at this point. So maybe we'll just keep it all there. But that's only part of the problem. But you're not wrong. I'm not going to say you're wrong. It's just there's so much more that goes into programming, that goes into tribalism, that there's a lot of stuff we can dissect, and we can go for another 2 hours.
Easily. Easily.
I mean, C.S. Lewis is a great, yes, regardless of your personal faith, absolutely you should read Lewis first. Not necessarily Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that's the candy. That's Lewis on candy. You really want to understand some of his unique perspective. The Great Divorce and the Screw Tape Letters are absolutely
they're
awesome,
really
which I haven't read all the way through yet.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I mean, my philosophy
Rinchar clarifies regarding the premise of reality as a fractured mirror through the spiritual world. I mean, I mean, it's, and that's just it. Like, Corione and I have these spiritual discussions often off camera, and we keep finding more things to agree on and less to agree against. Only time we get, I don't think we've gotten angry yet. But
No, I mean, the only time we start disagreeing is when it gets to matters of direct dogma.
Right.
And usually what we can do is we can point to each other and say, yes, this is not going to be universally liked, but there are reasons, and here's the reasoned argument behind it. And that, I think, is the best solution anyone can come up with.
Oh,
right?
yeah. The Space Trilogy. That's one that I think we want to do on this show, actually, in the future, when probably starting next year, because, oh, man, January's, yeah, it'll probably be a good one for January.
Yeah.
But yes, sorry guys, I can't finish the fan mails at this point because we only have the last 3 minutes here. We are coming down to the end. Corion, anything to plug?
Well, yeah, I just put forward my first video for October last weekend. I'm doing a fun exercise for October. I'm bringing in guests with me to talk about our favorite movies. Recently, I brought in Gabrielle. She is a wonderful human being, and we're jokingly referring to her as my intern in residence, as she's learning YouTube from me. And we did a fantastic video on practical magic. I would really appreciate it if everyone would take the opportunity, give it a view, and see what you think of it. I think we broke it down in a fun way, and I really hope that you guys would enjoy it. I'm just going to give you
30 minutes. No, I'm just...
Well, yeah, but I mean, I spliced in a fair bit from the movie, so you get some stuff in there.
Yep. All right. So that's the link to his video, but also definitely subscribe to his channel because we are trying to actually make and grow a free network here. And if you haven't checked out Marine with T and Telly, please do. Orville Nation was in here earlier. Absolutely check out his channel. And I need to be better about these, but my usual clip guy isn't. So, but yes, thank you all for joining the discussion tonight in the comments, and I want to thank our podcast listeners and all of our subscribers. Guys, please help us continue to grow. Put the word out there. Like, share, sub. Go watch our other videos to help boost our views if you can. If not, it's okay. I'm just glad you guys made it here today, and I thank you for making this stream really good, because this is October's a hard month for me, and
we're all there for you, and we're glad.
I can see that.
And you know what? I think I can speak for the chat and say that we're all glad to be here for you, and that we all want to continue to do that. And thank you for putting on this lovely show.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining it, and thank you for helping to make it. We're gonna try and get our DS9 stuff out sooner so you guys can follow along. But until then, I'm Petey York with the Ryder Brothers. Thanks for watching. We will see you next week.